Hello, today we will be trying out Apple's new UI calendar view to display a calendar, leverage it to select a date, and we're going to use calendar to translate it to other types of calendars. Here you can see in screen where we are selecting a different type of calendar and seeing how a date is highlighted there. We'll also see how we can use decoration in the calendar view to add small UI views to highlight different types of days. This is the app that we're going to use. Content view, and so we have a tab, and here we have our calendar scene. And right now, this is all that we have. So let's start using UI Calendar View. As the name says, it's UI kit, it's not Swift UI. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a UIViewRepresentable. And the first thing we're going to do is make UI view. Here we specify what we return. Instead of some UI view, we return UI calendar view. Let's create the update view. For now, we're not going to do anything here. Let's go back to our preview. And let's insert our calendar view here. Okay, there we have our calendar. This is all provided by Apple. We can see the different months. We can change the date here with the speaker. And for now, it's not selectable. Let's make it scale to fit. Give us a little bit of space. And let's start playing. We're not going to change the selected date. That's today. But let's limit. So let's start with a date range. We only want this month to be displayed. And by the way, we're going to do with this, it's here we have the available date range. To pass this date interval, what we're going to do is give the beginning and the end of the date, of the month, sorry. For that, we're going to use a calendar. And for now, that one's going to be the current calendar, so the one that the user has. And let's get this up. The first day of month. So we do that by getting the date component, which is the month and the year of the current date. And we're going to create a date from those components. Then we get the first day of next month by adding a month to this first day of month. That's date by adding. We're gonna add a month, first day of month, and then we subtract the date. And there we have our date interval. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so what changed here is we cannot move months here, and if we were to open this date picker, we cannot select any other month or year. Now let's play with changing the calendar. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this calendar, which is Gregorian, and we're going to see if we can select a date here and see it translated to another calendar. Before that, let's build the other calendar and see if we can transform it. So we will dynamically change the type of the calendar. Now in our calendar, we can specify to our UI calendar view, we can do this. We can add view, this receives a calendar. And we were using Calendar.Current. We can actually create a calendar from an identifier, and that's what we're gonna do. So our struct will have a Calendar.Identifier. Which would be by default Gregorian. And here we will also use that identifier instead of the current one. This variable will change. So when we change this identifier, we want to change the calendar of the view. So we have to update this. Yeah, that's it for now. We're gonna have another calendar here, and here we're gonna have a picker. Okay, here I populated this with some of the options: Gregorian, Hebrew, Chinese, and other calendars. Let's compress that. Here we have our picker. So let's select, for example, Coptic. Notice how this changed. The date picker is still Gregorian, but the display is translated. Notice that here we have 30 days, here we have 28. And same applies for the other ones. Oh, we got a crash. I think it's because we're not updating the available range. So that's another thing that we need to update once the calendar changes. After updating the calendar. In Hebrew. Okay, now what we're going to do is select a date here and have it reflect. So first of all, let's select this, and if we select a date, we want to see it display here. So I'm gonna pass in a binding variable, but first let's do all of our due diligence in the view. Now select the date, it's going to be a state variable. We will then pass the binding variable here. Now what we want to do is pass in a date here. So we're gonna add it. It's gonna be the date. Yes. Now also we only want to be able to select the date in this calendar, not in this one. So let's also assume that we're gonna have another Boolean variable which is canSelect. It's going to be true for this one. By default, it's going to be false, so let's not add it here. Okay. Now, where do we edit this behavior? Not directly in the UI calendar view. Instead, what we're going to do is add a selection behavior and then a delegate to that behavior. So after assigning the calendar in the date range, if we can select, we add to the view a selection behavior. Which is this one. UI calendar selection single date. We only want to be able to select one. And we need a UI calendar selection single date delegate, which is going to be our coordinator. Now, the coordinator is the one that we use for delegate. Since this is a struct, we need a class for this one that will be persisted. How do we do that? There's another method in UIViewRepresentable, which is called make coordinator. Let's call it calendar coordinator. It's going to be an NS object since UI calendar selection single date delegate forces that. And let's see, what else do we need here? Oh yeah. So when they select a date, and let's also add can select a date. We're gonna make it so that we cannot select a date that's in the weekend. Now, this is where we're gonna be selecting the date. So we need two things. One is the binding variable, since we're gonna change it here, and can select the date. Notice that we have date component. So where are we going to need to transform these date components to date? A calendar. So we're gonna use the Calendar.Identifier and the binding date variable. Okay, now here, so can select dates. We're not gonna allow to select a weekend. So first, let's get the date from this date component. All the date components can actually be new. So first, date component. And here we return this dating weekend. Yeah. And if the date is in the weekend, it cannot be selected. And for the ones that we can select, this method will be called didSelectDate. And for those, we're going to do pretty much the same. Date components can be nil. We're going to get the date. We're not going to return anything. And if we do get a date, then the selected date is equal to the date. And here we have the selected behavior. Notice how the date gets highlighted and the view gets updated here. Now, one thing that, and also we cannot select weekend. Yeah. There we have our selection. Now, let's move on to decoration. So what I want is that now that I have this calendar here, let's say Hebrew, I want to know the equivalent. So here we have the 18th. I want to see that when I select the 8th, this one gets highlighted. For that, we're going to use decorations. So in our calendar view, we can modify more of its appearance with a delegate. So now we need coordinator to be also a UI calendar view delegate. And in this, we're going to use the decoration. Now what we need to return is the decoration for a specific date component. Now for now, let's return, just so we can build and run. One important thing of what we want with the view here is we want the view to decorate if we're not able to select. So now we will also need the canSelect variable in our coordinator. Now, these are not going to be called for the ones that cannot be selected, since they are part of the selection delegate, and we only assign that one in the UIViewRepresentable if the user can select, but here we do need to guard against it. So need to guard that cannot select, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now here we're gonna pass in, oh, let's pass this, if not, return nil. Now, if we do find the date, we'll add that condition to the guard, but if we do find it, then what we're going to return is a default, which is going to be a small circle. And we can specify the color, it's orange, and the size, large. Now, another thing that will happen here is, although we have a binding variable, this binding variable will update here in the did select date, right? This will happen for the calendar above. So when we select here, this will cause the UI to update. However, here, you notice, by the way, how we have the decoration here because we're not doing a good job at our card. But when we update this here, this will actually not update the view here because nothing is changing. The view is changing the binding variable. We need to change something there. So what we're gonna do is change the date that we pick. So let's add another here, picked date. That's going to be a optional date. And that's what we're going to update here. And we're only going to do that if they cannot select. So if they cannot select, we're going to update this pick date, and we need to tell the coordinator, hey, update, sorry, not the coordinator, we need to tell the calendar to update the decoration in those dates. Here, reload the decoration for date components in our selected date and in our previous date. So if we select the date, we're going to decorate that date. When we change the selected date, we want to update the one that was previously selected and the current one. Now these date components are duplicated, can be duplicated for two dates, especially if we select the same date. So we need to be careful with this array. If not, we'll get an exception. And that's how we reload them. Very good there. And now let's improve our card. So we need to compare our two dates. Again, we're going to get the date from our component. And we also need the selected date. Now, if those two are not nil, we also need to compare them. So if the date is equal to the selected date, that's how we're gonna color the orange. Let's see if this works. At the beginning, nothing should be decorated. See here, select this. Nothing is changing. All right, it's not the selected date, it's the picked date, the one that we're updating. I just discussed this. Let's try select the first one. You can see, let's change it to Hebrew. Select the date, nice. Now we can see our date and how it translates to other calendars. Now that we have our decoration for the selected calendar, let's play a little bit more with this. We want to highlight, given that we are in the month of February, let's highlight Valentine's Day, which is the 14th of February. If the user cannot select, let's highlight Valentine's. So let's see, Valentine's date components. So we're gonna create and see how we can create date components with a calendar specifying the year, month, day, and other parts. And then we can do something similar. Here we will get the date the date components, we have them here. So we get the date, we have our Valentine's Day component, we can ask our calendar to compare them. So we're gonna ask if the date that we're asking the decoration for is equal to the Valentine's date, and the granularity we want it to the date component. Now if it is, instead of returning default, let's use another decoration. We can use an image. And let's use an SF symbol. Color, why not? Red. Let's see how that looks. Amazing. The different decorators here. So here we have a heart. Here we have the default one. And lastly, let's play around with the custom one, where we can pass in a view. So let's pass in one where we draw for the weekends. And if it is on the weekend, we already know how to add this with this. So if it is in the weekend, let's return a custom view. Let's return a view provider. And let's return here a UI label. And the weekend is the date. It's the day for the pets. Okay, let's see how this looks with our custom views. There you go. Now notice that here we have a limitation with the custom view. You cannot build whatever you want because we're constrained to size. If this was to get bigger, it will get clipped. But for now, we have our two emojis for our pets. That's all for today. We pretty much explored every capability the UI calendar view has, except for the multiple selection behavior, which is just being able to select more than one date at the same time. Even though it doesn't have a Swift UI view equivalent, UIViewRepresentable makes this easy to incorporate in Swift UI views. As you can see, we did here in this exercise. This is a Swift UI view. These two calendars are inside a VStack inside of a scroll view. Customizing this calendar is very easy thanks to the decorator view using a calendar view delegate, and translating date across different types of calendars is easy thanks to the date components implementation, as long as you keep in mind to use the calendar, the appropriate calendar, whether it is the one the user has configured or the one you're changing using an identifier and maybe a different locale. Hope you liked the video. Bye.